guys in the dark.
About 14 years ago, my life was a literal nightmare. The hellscape was filled with fun things such as the neglect and abuse on behalf of my mother. Thoughts that led to attempts that would never work, such as suicide and whatnot. And way too many anime characters to relate to. I never felt truly loved. But when I had a girlfriend, or even a boyfriend, it didn't feel real to me. For me, all they were was someone that wasn't my parents. Even sex at the same time was just a stress reliever or an escape from my thoughts. Other than video games and anime, that was my only stress relief. Deep down, I just wanted to die. Every day I was around my parents was another where I wanted to hang myself. My school life wasn't great either. I got into arguments that ended up developing into fights constantly. One day in the middle of winter, I was approached by a girl who was the most stunning thing that I had ever seen. She had ice blue eyes, blonde hair that went down to her cheeks, pale skin, a slightly too high-pitched voice, but beautiful nonetheless. Later I found out that her name was Emma. I didn't think anything of it at the time. I was too enamored with her beauty. I wanted to be friends with her, and I was, for a little bit at least. The more that we talked, though, the closer we got. It got to the point that hearing her voice made me happy all the time. One day, she held my hand. Hers were as soft as silk. Her hugs were warm, and for some reason, she made me feel safe. And even though I didn't tell her anything about my life, somewhere through those icy eyes, it felt like she already knew what I was going through, even though there was no way that she could. As the months had passed, it felt like I knew her inside and out. But as it turned out, I didn't really know her at all. Not until it was much too late. There were demons that lurked just beneath her beautiful face. They started to show up more and more as time had passed by. I didn't know that entity wanted me more than I ever could have imagined. She started sending me letters. They seemed sweet, starting with how much she appreciated our friendship, and how she would never do anything to tarnish it. I appreciated all those letters dearly, since I never really got mail, and all of them were comforting to me. However, I didn't stop to think about how she got my address, let alone my apartment number. It had completely flown over my head completely, because of the comfort of having someone write to me, knowing someone was out there who cared about me. Each time I had a letter sent to me, I read it, and then burned it immediately in fear that my parents would get into my business and try to find out about her. But she had known more than I thought she did, way more than I even thought, and the letters only continued to get stronger. As time has passed, they went from short and sweet to obsessive and lovesick. Surprisingly, I usually remember a line from one of those letters. To my sweet wolf, I know what's going on in your life. I know more about you than you know about yourself. I know who's been hurting you. I had started hanging out in the back of the building, keeping away from the thugs for a little bit. I would just sit there with my eyes closed, wandering in my own thoughts, except for that day that I heard footsteps. They were quick ones. I opened my eyes to see her. She grabbed me by the shirt, slamming me into the wall, and then kissing me deeply. At the same time, I heard the switch and flick of a blade, and then I felt its cold steel up to my throat. Her soulless eyes had peered into mine as she had hissed, "What are you doing outside, baby? Don't you know that it's dangerous out here?" I felt the cold steel press against my throat when I kept stubbornly silent. "What are you doing outside?" she replied. Tears had ran down my face, and I smiled. "Just waiting for you." She put that knife down, holding it in her right hand, and held me, and told me about how she'd been watching me suffer for the past 3 months, before she even had the courage to come up to me. During this talk, I had stayed silent the whole time. She sniffed at my hair, licked my neck, and smelled my armpit. It felt like she was a wolf, and I was her territory. An hour had passed, but before we could part, she whispered into my ear, "Spit in my mouth." It was clear that I didn't get a choice in the matter. She opened up, and the switchblade once again, and aimed it at my stomach as she had opened up her beautiful mouth, tongue out and everything. I spat once, twice, even 3 times. Then she closed her mouth, and savored every single bit of it. She gave me a hug afterwards, telling me from now on she will meet me at this very spot. We parted ways, and I went home, ignoring the assholes in my life. I had taken a shower, ate my food, and then went back to bed to do it all again the very next day. It was the same shit, different day. Although as I walked to school, usually I would take a bus, but I had felt like walking that day. This had caused me to be late to school, and by the time I got there, she was waiting for me. "I knew that you'd be walking to school," she said gleefully. "I'm always watching you, baby," taking my hand as we walked inside. I won't lie, the company was pretty nice, but as soon as we had got to her friend group, she became an entirely different person, acting like she didn't even know that I had existed. I just shrugged it off, since she always had come back to me after school, seemingly drawn to my presence. "I'm sorry," she said one day. "I have to make an act in front of all of my friends. You're not liked all that much here, you know what I mean?" Tell me something that I don't know, I thought. I didn't blame her, though. With my track record of hitting girls and boys alike, and almost punching a teacher in the face once, I was considered quite the violent type, though I always had a very good reason for it. Over the past couple of days, however, something had changed in her dramatically, and it started as soon as I had started to look for a significant other. She didn't seem to like that very much. I had started to notice that a lot of the girls that did like me back had stopped talking to me, or ran from me even. This happened for a good couple of weeks, until one day at school my name was sprayed all over the school bathroom and the walls. This got me into trouble, but I assured the school that this wasn't me. I may have been a bad person in school, but I didn't do the graffiti. With some luck, the principal at the time had believed me. This still made my home life an even worse living hell, even though they knew that there was no way I'd be able to afford to buy any spray paint, and I was beaten because of it. This situation alone made me run away from home at least for 2 hours every single time that I went out. Emma would always find me, though. She'd whisper in my ear about how much she loved me and wanted to protect me every single time that she saw me, always with the switchblade to my throat to ensure that I didn't run away from her. I think she knew I wasn't going to run away at this point, mostly because she knew that she made me feel loved. The day that I attempted suicide again, and failed, I knew that she would find me, so I ran to her first. She would know to find me, and lo and behold, I was slammed into the wall once again. This time, the blade was pressed into my chest, as she had slapped me in the face repeatedly. "No one is allowed to kill you. No one but me," she said. "Not even yourself. I don't care what you're going through. You belong to me, and only me." She had screamed this in my face. The only reason why I didn't stop the abuse is that I needed you to suffer. This is the only way that you can feel how much I love you, and trust and believe I want to stop this. But you're not 18 yet, so I can't. This had angered me so much that I shoved her away, got on my heels, and grabbed her hand, begging with the knife against my throat. "Just end it. End my suffering, please. Take me away from all of this. I really need this." She cocked her head to the side, dropped to her knees as well, and held me close. She whispered a word in Japanese that I didn't know at the time. Then she had pulled me in for a quick kiss before she began wrapping her hands around my throat, choking me again. I didn't think of her as particularly strong, but any doubt about this was quick dashed when my entire body was shoved up against the wall. Every once in a while, her face was up close to mine, and she would continue to look into my eyes, and with every small second time had passed, her grip had continued to grow tighter. When my eyes started to sporadically move, she would aggressively tell me, "Eyes on me, eyes on me, eyes on me, now." A glob of my saliva had came up, and she licked it, grinning like the cat who had gotten the cream. At this point, I couldn't tell if it was intent on ending me or just playing with me for her own pleasures. After a few moments had passed, she let go as I had grasped for air, slumping in relief into the concrete ground. She laid on the ground right next to me, face to face, reaching her hand up. She had caressed my face for a moment, then ran her fingers through my hair as she had smiled. Tears were still running down her face. For a moment, there was silence, some sort of peace, so to speak of, in spite of what had just happened. I started crying with her when she finally spoke. "I can't do it. I really don't know what I would do without you. You might not believe it now, but you and I are the same, and you're just not there yet." I responded back, perplexed and confused. "What the hell do you mean? Damaged people like you and me all end up the same. It just takes time, but it happens, and nothing will fix you." Once again, I had shrugged it off, not really understanding a damn thing. Then, however, I did something that I never thought I would do. I pulled her in and held her, running my fingers through her hair and giving her a kiss on the forehead. I asked her, "Do you love me?" Her face was buried into my chest, but I heard her muffled voice say, "That's a stupid question. You know the answer." I laughed a little at this. Well, according to my folks at home, I'm stupid, and will be nothing important to the world. We both got up for a moment off the ground. It was getting dark, and it was about time that we had parted ways. Before any of that happened, however, she ended up our meeting with, "It's not about being important to the world. It's about being important to that one person. To me, you're important. You're that person for me." I smiled. It quickly faded, though, as I heard gunshots in the distance. This was both our cues to leave. Living in the ghetto is not very easy. As I carefully got home, it was relatively calm for once. I don't know why, but I wasn't going to question any of it. I quickly went back to my room, sat down in my computer chair, and I took a deep breath. I turned on my PlayStation, deciding to play video games when pondering the situation. I was trying to understand her words and what she had meant by them, but I quickly got distracted thinking about the next episode of Inuyasha that was supposed to come on that very night, so I stayed up watching my show. After that, I decided to turn in for bed. For some reason, I just couldn't get to sleep, though. I couldn't tell if it was due to the fact that I still had a bedwetting problem, and I was in fear of getting my ass beat for pissing the bed, or the insomnia was getting to me. Either way, it was late, and it was concerning me, since I couldn't get up to drink the fluids. Because I was very much restricted due to my unfortunate problem, I settled with just staying up, turning down the volume on my TV, and then proceeding to play one of my favorite survival horror games, Resident Evil. After about 2 hours had passed, when I heard a very light knock at my window. This was not normal by any means, as in no one had ever just knocked on my window. Of course, the normal individual would have been able to just call for their parents, but my family life was far from normal. Instead, I took care of it myself. I took a peek, only to see in the moonlight that it was Emma. Now obviously my adrenaline is pumping like no other, because this is the first time experience for me. This kind of thing had never happened. I only saw this shit in horror movies. My breathing was erratic, but I managed to calm down slowly, taking deep breaths as I had cracked open my window inch by inch. She was the first to speak. "Hi, baby. What are you doing? You want to come out so that we can be alone?" Now, many thoughts had ran through my head at this very point. The first thing being, what the fuck is she doing out here this late at night, in the hood? My second thought is, she's out of her fucking mind. My parents would kill me if they had found out. Words had finally left my mouth. Whispering, of course. I'd love to do that. It would be great. However, it would also be a very bad idea if my parents were to find out that I had left this late. The coincidences would be huge for me. She gave me a blank look, because what you go through already isn't just bad enough. Really, what do you have to lose? Your parents leave you in the same piss-soaked bed and sheets every night. I'm surprised that you're even able to breathe. It smells like ammonia so much. And before you think that I'm making fun of you, I'm not. I just want what's best for you. And being here is not what's best for you. You need time away from that place. I'd thought about it for a moment, but before I was even able to take action, I heard one of my parents' doors click open. Quickly, I'd closed my curtain and acted like I was asleep. However, there was one problem. My console happened to still be on. So I got scolded for that one, and then I was grounded from my console. Then I got my ass beat in the morning for it. I'm going to safely assume that she either ran off or just stayed. But with how dangerous the ghetto was in the area of the city, I'm pretty sure that she just ran off. Despite being sore from the belt beating, I got to school okay. It was morning, so everyone was hanging out with each other. I hung out with my small group of friends, and of course I saw Emma passing me by like usual. That is, until she stopped and held my hand. My friends just looked at me, kind of shocked, as if I was just pulled away. Even I was shocked for a very simple moment. Simply asking, "What are you doing?" She smiled at me. "We're together, aren't we? Can't hide it now. That would just be silly. And now we can spend more time together." Honestly, I was okay with this, because unlike the rest of my relationships that were just built around sex, this was a person who I really felt loved by. However, I didn't realize that there were consequences that came along with being with Emma. Apparently there were a couple of people who really liked her, and while she paid no mind to them, most of them were boys. So I had no problem laying them the hell out. However, when it came to a friend of a friend who wanted to fight me, I had a slight problem, because it was a simple chain reaction. If you fight a friend of another friend, that means that you'll be fighting that other friend eventually. And these were particular chain reactions that I didn't like. But if it meant being with her, fuck it, I was in. So several fights had happened. I was suspended several times, and so on, and so on. However, my relationship with Emma was great. I got a lot of love that I never knew I needed, let alone wanted. Surprisingly, there was no sex in this relationship. I really didn't need it. I didn't want it, unless she wanted it, of course. However, my relationship with Emma was great. Honestly, the rules were pretty simple, at least to me at the time. Don't hang out with females that she doesn't deem worthy of hanging out with. Don't hang out with men that she doesn't deem worthy of hanging out with. Don't look at any girls or guys sexually. I followed all of these rules. I realized that I had fallen in love with her. I loved this girl, no matter how much I would get hurt or beaten or scolded, or even yelled at. As long as I had her, I would take all of that. I was with her for 3 months. Now I'm sure you're wondering, how did this end? Unfortunately, she had gotten with my ex-boyfriend's best friend behind my back, and then kissed him right in front of me. I snapped, grabbed him, and shoved him towards the floor, and proceeded to beat the shit out of him. Then my eyes had turned to Emma, and with no hesitation or thought, just pure rage, grabbed her and put her up against the wall, and proceeded to hurt her as well. I punched her several times in the face and the ribs, and I even kicked her in the stomach. As I was finally able to calm down, I realized that something was wrong. Not the fact that I pretty much knocked the living crap out of my girlfriend, so much as her reacting to it all. She just looked at me with a smile. Please note that no normal person would be smiling with a busted lip or nose, possibly bruised ribs, and getting kicked in the stomach. I simply just screamed at her, "Why did you do this? Why would you even do this to me?" She just continued to smile, even as she responded. "I wanted to test your reaction. I wanted to know how you would respond. He was nothing but a pawn, and might I say, you had passed with flying colors." I was confused and pissed off. I really didn't understand this. She continued, "I know what this means. It's the end for us, and I have no one else to blame but myself for that. But understand this, and understand this well. No matter where you go, no matter who you marry, no matter what decisions you make in your life, you'll always be a part of mine. You'll always think of me. And you will belong to me, and I will always be watching you." After that, she simply just walked away. She didn't even clean up the blood. And after a week had passed, due to being in a long suspension, I still had gotten no word for her. No stalking, no nothing. I asked around, including all of my friends. They didn't know where she was at all. I asked the teachers and the principal, but they had no idea either. Then a month had passed. I asked again, this time just asking the teachers and the principal. Finally, the principal had an answer for me. She moved away. As soon as I heard those words, I felt a deep, dark pit in my stomach. I was alone once again, and unfortunately, with that loneliness came nothingness. I couldn't feel anything, and I did everything I could to feel something. But no matter what I did, no matter how fucked up it was, I still couldn't feel anything. The abuse from my folks had continued all the way up until I was 18. I'm now 32, and with those years, I felt a new kind of abuse that I refused to get into. But just understand that I'm right back into a pit of loneliness once again, and I can't tell if I miss her or I miss the attention. Yeah, something is definitely wrong with me, but all I can do now is just accept it. I've been in therapy for some time now, and nothing will fix me. just like she had said. I have to continually pretend and pretend and pretend that I'm normal, but I'm not. I'm far from it. I guess in the end, we both were yanderes. However, I will say this. I get this feeling sometimes, like she's still watching and waiting. I really don't understand why, but that's just how I feel. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.